In the dim light of a hospital room in Verdania, 2015, I, Emma Lane, lay frail and feverish, my body worn from decades of toil. The wooden walls of our rural home, a modest structure in Verdania's collectivist province, seemed to close in as my heart, once steadfast, shattered under the weight of betrayal. For 40 years, I had poured my soul into my marriage to Mason Blake, a man I believed cherished me. I managed our household tended fields in Verdania's re-education program and surrendered my dreams of agricultural research to support his rise to leadership. Yet on my deathbed, the truth unraveled like a cruel jest. Mason stood by the window, his once kind eyes now cold and distant. Beside him was Ava Young, a widow whose sharp beauty masked a calculating heart. Her gold jewelry glinted, starkly contrasting with my faded apron, as she entered our home uninvited. Mason's voice dripped with disdain. "Emma, if I'd known I'd become a provincial leader, I'd never have married someone so plain, so uninspiring." His words cut deeper than any knife, each syllable a betrayal of the life we'd built. Ava stepped closer, her lips curled in a sneer. "You stole my place as his wife for decades, Emma. 40 years of playing the leader's spouse should be enough for you." I clutched the thin hospital blanket, my chest aching, not from illness, but from the sting of their scorn. The Re-Education Program, a 1970s Verdanian initiative to develop rural lands, had bound Mason and me to this village. We toiled alongside other urban youth, dreaming of return spots to the city, rare permits granting urban relocation and career advancement. I had given up my place earned through my innovative crop rotation techniques so Mason could return and climb the ranks. I stayed behind, managing our home, believing his promises of love. His confession revealed a heartless truth: he had married me for my family's influence, not love. The final blow came from the son I had raised with every ounce of my devotion. A lanky boy of 20, his eyes mirrored Ava's, not mine. He stepped forward, his voice venomous. "Die, you old hag. My birth parents would have been together years ago if not for you." The room spun as I realized the child I'd nurtured, believing him a relative's, was Mason and Ava's illegitimate son. My sacrifice, years of labor, loneliness, and unfulfilled dreams had been for a lie. Ava's smirk widened, her ambition clear. Widowed young after her husband perished in Verdania's harsh winters, she had clung to Mason, seeing him as her escape from rural obscurity. Rage surged through me, hotter than the fever consuming my body. I reached for the fruit knife on the bedside table, its blade catching the dim light. "How could you?" I screamed, my voice hoarse but fierce. Mason's eyes widened, but he didn't move. Ava laughed, a sound sharp and mocking. "Go ahead, Emma. You're nothing without him." My hand trembled, the knife heavy with intent. In a moment of blind fury, I lunged, plunging the blade into Mason's chest. His gasp echoed as blood stained his shirt. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, my heart failing under the strain. As we collapsed together, a strange light enveloped me, warm and pulsing, whispering of second chances, tied to my unrealized potential, my abandoned work in agricultural science. Darkness swallowed me, but the light's promise lingered. I had given everything to a man who saw me as a stepping stone to a son who despised me, to a life that mocked my devotion. Yet in that final moment, the light offered redemption. It spoke of rebirth, a chance to rewrite my story, to reclaim the dreams I'd buried for Mason's ambition. As my consciousness faded, I vowed that if fate granted me this gift, I would never again sacrifice my worth for those who deemed me unworthy. The world snapped into focus, and I, Emma Lane, found myself standing in Verdania's village square, my heart pounding like a drum. It was 1975, and I was 20 again, my body strong, my mind sharp with memories of a life betrayed. The air smelled of freshly turned soil, and the late summer sun cast long shadows over the cobblestones. Around me, villagers and youth program comrades gathered, their faces expectant, waiting for Mason Blake to propose. Verdania's Re-Education Program, a government mandate to transform rural lands, had brought us here from the city, binding us to fields and factories with the promise of rare return spots to urban life. I had given up such a spot for Mason in my past life, a sacrifice that fueled his rise and my ruin. Now reborn, I stood at the crossroads of that fateful choice. Mason stepped forward, tall and handsome in his youth, his dark hair tousled by the breeze. His hand clasped mine, warm and firm, and for a fleeting moment I saw the boy I'd loved since childhood, when we'd raced through Verdania's housing compound, dreaming of city lights. Emma, he began, his voice steady, I swear I'll love you for the rest of my life. The crowd murmured approval, but his eyes glazed over like a shadow passed through them. He froze, his grip tightening, then yanked his hand away. His gaze turned icy, a hint of the arrogance that would unravel him. The engagement's off, he declared, his voice harsh. I'm meant for greater things. We're not a match. Gasps rippled through the square. I stumbled, caught off guard by the force of his rejection, but I didn't fall. The memories of my past life, his betrayal, Ava's sneer, the son who despised me, anchored me. I wasn't the naive girl he expected. Mason turned his steps purposeful and ran to Ava Young, who stood at the crowd's edge. Her sharp eyes, framed by auburn hair, gleamed with ambition, but a flicker of uncertainty betrayed her. Widowed at 22, after her husband succumbed to Verdania's brutal winters, Ava saw Mason as her ticket to escape rural stigma. Ava, Mason said, seizing her hand, You're the only one in my heart. Marry me and I'll make you the happiest woman in the world. They embraced, a melodrama unfolding before the stunned villagers. Rachel, Blake Mason's fiery sister, pushed through the crowd, her face flushed with fury. Have you lost your mind? She hissed. Emma's family could secure your return spot. Ava's a widow who can't read a contract, fiercely loyal to family honor. Rachel had joined the re-education program to support Mason, but Verdania's rigid system stifled her dreams of becoming a teacher. Mason sneered, his confidence tinged with a nervous edge. I don't need Emma's family. I'll earn the return spot myself, Rachel. Ava is my true destiny. His words carried a bravado that didn't match the slight tremor in his hands, a crack in his facade hinting at the paranoia that would consume him. The village chief, a grizzled man with a voice like gravel, roared, Mason, you planned this proposal for weeks. Why back out now? Mason ignored him, his eyes locked on Ava as if convincing himself of his choice. Whispers spread among the crowd. Some pitied me, others scorned Mason's audacity, but I felt no anger. Instead, a cold clarity settled over me. In my past life, I'd surrendered my return spot earned through my crop rotation experiments that boosted Verdania's yields. Mason had used it to climb to leadership, repaying me with betrayal. Rebirth, a mystical gift tied to my unfulfilled potential, had brought me back to this moment. I knew the truth: Mason's rise depended on my sacrifice, and his ambition would crumble without it. I straightened, meeting Mason's gaze. If that's your choice, I won't stop you, I said, my voice steady. The crowd hushed, surprised by my composure. Ava's lips twitched, her confidence wavering as she sensed my resolve. Mason's brow furrowed, expecting tears or pleas. But I turned and walked away, the cobblestones firm beneath my feet. The light that had enveloped me at death whispered again, urging me to reclaim my dreams of agricultural research. This time I would not yield. As I left the square, Rachel's voice echoed, berating Mason, while Ava's hesitant glance followed me. The stage was set, and I was ready to rewrite my fate. The cobblestones of Verdania's village square crunched under my boots as I walked away from Mason Blake's betrayal, my heart steady, despite the sting of his words. It was 1975, and the late summer air buzzed with the murmurs of villagers and youth program comrades, their eyes darting between me, Emma Lane, and the spectacle unfolding behind me. Verdania's re-education program, a government effort to modernize rural lands, had tethered us to this province where we toiled in fields for the slim chance of a return spot to the city, a permit to escape rural hardship and pursue a career. In my past life, I had given mine to Mason, believing his love was true, only to be repaid with deceit. Now reborn with memories of that betrayal, I refused to falter. Mason's voice rang out, brash and unsteady. Ava, you're my true destiny. He clutched Ava Young's hand, her auburn hair catching the sunlight as she leaned into him. Ava, widowed young after her husband perished in Verdania's unforgiving winters, wore a confident smile, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. She had endured the village's whispers, her husband's death left her vulnerable, and Mason's promises of a city life offered escape from her tarnished status. Yet her grip on his arm seemed more desperate than loving, as if she sensed the fragility of his claims. Rachel, Blake Mason's sister, stormed toward him, her face a mask of fury. You're throwing away everything, Mason, she snapped, her voice carrying across the square. Emma's family has connections to secure your return spot. Ava can't even sign her name, Rachel, 23, and sharp-witted, had joined the re-education program to support her brother, sacrificing her dream of teaching in the city. Her loyalty to family clashed with her growing disillusionment, her hands clenched as she glared at Mason. He laughed, a brittle sound that hinted at unease. I don't need Emma's family, Rachel. I'll earn the spot myself. I'll be a leader in 2 years and Ava will be at my side. His eyes darted as if seeking approval from the crowd, a sign of the paranoia that would later consume him. The village chief, a weathered Tauran, stepped forward, his gravelly voice booming. Mason Blake, you planned this proposal for weeks, parading betrothal gifts for Emma. Why this farce? Mason waved him off, his confidence forced. Those gifts were always for Ava. She's the one worthy of me. He gestured to his comrades to redirect the gifts, silks, and trinkets to Ava's home. The crowd's murmurs grew sharper, some pitying me, others scorning Mason's audacity. A woman whispered Emma chased him too long, no self-respect. Another countered, he's the fool tossing aside a woman like her. I stood tall, my gaze fixed on the horizon where Verdania's fields stretched toward the city. I'd been crushed by this moment in my past life, pleading with Mason to reconsider. But Rebirth had gifted me clarity, a mystical light tying my second chance to my unfulfilled passion for agricultural research. I had developed crop rotation techniques that doubled Verdania's yields, earning me a return spot that Mason later claimed. His success, his leadership, all built on my sacrifice. Now I saw his bravado for what it was, a fragile mask hiding his fear of failure. Turning to face Mason, I spoke, my voice clear and unwavering. If Ava's your choice, so be it. I won't beg. The crowd hushed, stunned by my composure. Ava's smile faltered, her fingers tightening on Mason's arm. She had expected tears, perhaps a scene, but my calm unnerved her. Mason's brow furrowed, his confidence shaken by my indifference. You're giving up so easily, he taunted, but his voice cracked, betraying a flicker of doubt. Rachel caught my eye, her anger softening to something like respect, though her loyalty to Mason held firm. I walked away, the square's noise fading behind me. The light of Rebirth pulsed in my mind, whispering of my potential to transform Verdania's fields and beyond. Ava's ambition, Rachel's frustration, Mason's unraveling ego, they were no longer my burdens. My resolve hardened when I headed toward the research shed where I'd been testing soil samples. This time I would claim the return spot, not for love, but for my dreams. Ava's hesitant glance followed me as I left, and Mason's forced laughter echoed, a hollow prelude to his coming fall. As I left Verdania's village square, the echoes of Mason Blake's betrayal faded, replaced by the rustle of wheat fields under the 1975 summer sky. My boots crunched on the dirt path leading to the research shed, where my soil samples awaited reminders of the dreams I'd buried in my past life. In Verdania, a collectivist province bound by the government's re-education program, urban youth like me toiled in rural exile, chasing elusive return spots to the city. These permits, granted for exceptional contributions, promised escape from the fields and a chance at a career. In my previous life, I had surrendered mine to Mason, believing his love was worth more than my ambitions. Now reborn with memories of that betrayal, I walked with purpose, determined to reclaim what was mine. In that past life, Mason and I had grown up in Verdania's housing compound, our childhood filled with laughter and shared dreams of city lights. We were inseparable, racing through dusty courtyards, our futures intertwined. When the re-education program assigned us to this rural outpost, we planned to marry once we returned to the city. My experiments with crop rotation, blending traditional methods with scientific precision, had doubled Verdania's wheat yields, earning me a return spot. But when the list was released, only Mason's name appeared. I gave him my spot, thinking it was for love, and stayed behind managing our modest home while he pursued his career. Mason's rise was swift. He climbed to leadership in the city, his charm masking a growing distance. I endured years of a long-distance marriage, tending fields and maintaining our household. He sent a child to live with us, claiming it was a relative's, and I poured my heart into raising the boy, believing Mason's tenderness when he visited. He never complained about my inability to conceive, blaming his health, and I, naive, trusted him. My health faltered from overwork, my body weakened by endless labor, yet I pressed on, driven by devotion. In Verdania's harsh winters, I'd lie awake dreaming of my abandoned research techniques to revolutionize agriculture, but I pushed those thoughts aside for Mason's sake. Ava Young, the widow who would unravel my world, entered our lives subtly. She appeared during Mason's visits in my past life, her sharp eyes and bold laughter drawing his attention. She mocked my dedication to research, saying, "Emma, you're a married woman. Mason needs your support, not your experiments. Focus on giving him a child to secure him." Her words stung, feeding my insecurities, and I abandoned my work, believing it would strengthen our marriage. Only on my deathbed did I learn the truth. The boy I raised was Mason and Ava's son, conceived during their affair. Mason had married me for my family's influence, using my return spot to fuel his ambition, while Ava waited in the shadows, her dreams of city life tied to his success. Ava's complexity haunted me now. Widowed at 22, she faced Verdania's scorn, her husband's death in a snowstorm, marking her as an outsider. She clung to Mason, seeing him as her escape, her ambition sharpened by years of hardship. Mason, meanwhile, hid his deceit behind tender gestures, but his letters from the city grew colder, his visits laced with impatience. In those final years, as my health crumbled, he admitted he'd stayed with me for convenience, letting me raise his son, while he planned a future with Ava. The betrayal cut deep, but the light of rebirth, a mystical force tied to my unrealized potential, had given me this second chance. In the research shed, I sifted through soil samples, my fingers tracing the earth that held my dreams. My crop rotation methods, documented in worn notebooks, could transform Verdania's fields and beyond. Mason's rejection in the square, his claim of earning a return spot without me, rang hollow. His nervous laughter and the tremor in his voice hinted at a man already fraying his confidence, a fragile shield against doubt. I knew his path without my sacrifice, he would falter. Ava's desperate grip on him and Rachel's angry loyalty were threads in a tapestry I no longer needed to weave. Closing the shed door, I vowed to let Mason's lies unravel, my focus fixed on the future I would build. The sun dipped low over Verdania's fields, casting golden hues across the research shed where I, Emma Lane, pored over my crop rotation notes. It was 1975, and the weight of my reborn life settled firmly on my shoulders. Verdania's re-education program, a collectivist mandate to modernize rural provinces, bound us to this land where return spots to the city were prizes for exceptional work. My past life sacrifice, giving Mason Blake my return spot earned through my agricultural innovations, had fueled his rise and my ruin. Armed with memories of his betrayal, I recorded every detail of this new timeline in a worn journal, my pen steady as I prepared for the reckoning ahead. Days after Mason's public rejection, Ava Young appeared at my doorstep, her auburn hair pinned neatly, her red lips curled in a practiced smile. "Emma," she said, her voice sweet but sharp. "Mason told me he sees the future, his destiny as a leader with me by his side." Her confidence wavered, her eyes darting as if seeking reassurance. Widowed at 22 after her husband died in a Verdanian blizzard, Ava had endured the village's scorn, her status as an outsider fueling her ambition. She saw Mason as her escape from rural exile, a chance to reclaim the dignity stripped from her. Yet her fingers twisted the hem of her dress, betraying her fear that his promises might be hollow. I leaned against the doorframe, my gaze steady. "Seize the future," I said, a scoff escaping my lips. "He's spinning tales, Ava. Be careful what you believe." Her smile faltered, a flicker of doubt crossing her face. In my past life, Ava had mocked my research, urging me to abandon it for Mason's sake, all while hiding her affair with him. Now I saw her for what she was, a woman driven by desperation, her ambition tangled with vulnerability. She stepped closer, her voice lowering. "You did so much for him, Emma. But you two have no future. Let him go." Her words were meant to wound, but they only sharpened my resolve. Mason, meanwhile, roamed Verdania's youth program camps, boasting to comrades about his imminent return spot. "I'll be the first to leave this backwater," he declared, his voice loud, but his eyes restless, scanning for doubters. His comrades nodded, swayed by his charisma. But I noticed the tremor in his hands, the way he glanced over his shoulder as if expecting betrayal. In my past life, his confidence had masked his deceit. Now it hid a growing paranoia, a fear that his plans might unravel without my sacrifice. He claimed he'd earned the return spot alone, but I knew the truth. My crop rotation techniques, which he'd once dismissed, were the key to my ticket back to the city. I closed my journal, the pages filled with notes on Mason's lies and Ava's visit. My research shed was my sanctuary, a cramped wooden structure filled with soil samples and charts. I refined my methods there, blending local grains with hybrid seeds to boost yields. I'd abandoned this work in my past life, swayed by Ava's taunts and Mason's needs. Rebirth, a mystical light tied to my unrealized potential, had allowed me to rewrite my story. I wouldn't let their deception derail me again. Ava's ambition was her burden, fueled by her fear of remaining a scorned widow. Mason's boasts, laced with unease, were a prelude to his downfall. Ava's parting glance held a mix of defiance and uncertainty as she left. "You'll see, Emma," she said, her voice trembling. Mason and I are meant for the city. I shut the door, my heart calm but resolute. Mason's deception was apparent. He used Ava just as he'd used me to bolster his fragile ego. Rachel Blake, his sister, had warned him in the square, her loyalty strained by his recklessness. Her words echoed in my mind. "You're throwing away everything." I knew she saw his flaws but clung to family duty. Turning back to my notes, I vowed to let Mason's lies collapse under their weight, my focus fixed on the fields where my future lay. 2 months had passed since Mason Blake's betrayal in Verdania's village square, and the air buzzed with anticipation as his wedding to Ava Young approached. Emma Lane, stood at the edge of the celebration, my new dress crisp against my skin, a stark contrast to the worn apron of my past life. Verdania, a rural province under the 1970s collectivist re-education program, thrived on gossip, and Mason's lavish wedding was its fuel. The program demanded we toil for return spots, rare permits to the city, and I had earned one in my past life through my crop rotation techniques, only to give it to Mason. Reborn with memories of his deceit, I attended the wedding not to mourn, but to witness the unraveling of his lies. The village hall, a weathered barn, transformed with colorful banners, hosted 10 banquet tables, a rare extravagance in Verdania's lean times. Mason and I had married quietly in my past life, saving every coin for his city dreams. Now sure of a return spot he hadn't earned, he spared no expense. Guests whispered as I entered, their eyes flickering with pity and curiosity. In a tailored suit, Mason stood beside Ava, her auburn hair adorned with flowers, her gold jewelry gleaming. Her smile was radiant but tense, her ambition to escape widowhood's stigma hinging on Mason's promises. Yet her eyes darted as if sensing the fragility of his boasts. Mason spotted me, his grin sharp but unsteady. "Still chasing me, Emma," he taunted, his voice loud enough to draw attention. His hands fidgeted, a sign of the paranoia creeping into his once confident demeanor. Ava, clutching his arm, added, "Have some dignity, Emma. This is our day." Her words carried a tremor, betraying her fear that Mason's future vision, a lie he'd spun to win her, was faltering. She'd mocked my research in my past life, urging me to serve Mason. Now I saw her desperation, a widow who'd endured Verdania's scorn after her husband's death, pinning her hopes on a man unraveling under pressure. I smiled coolly, my voice steady. "I'm here for the return list, not trash." The crowd hushed, a few gasps breaking the silence. Mason's eyes narrowed, his bravado cracking, while Ava's grip tightened, her confidence shaken. Rachel Blake, Mason's sister, watched from a corner, her face a mix of frustration and guilt. She'd sacrificed her teaching dreams to support him in the re-education program, but his reckless choice of Ava strained her loyalty. "Mason's lost it," she muttered to a friend, her voice low but audible. Her eyes met mine silently, acknowledging my strength, though she remained bound to family duty. The feast began, platters of roasted vegetables and bread filling the warm air. I chose a corner seat, my journal tucked in my pocket, where I'd recorded Mason's lies and Ava's doubts. My research shed, filled with soil samples and hybrid seed charts, awaited me, a testament to my crop rotation methods that could transform Verdania's fields. Rebirth, a mystical light tied to my unrealized potential, had brought me here to reclaim my future, not to fight for Mason. In my past life, I'd abandoned my work for him, believing his love was my purpose. Now I knew better. As the music swelled, Mason grabbed a glass, his voice rising. "Soon I'll take Ava to the city where we belong." His comrades cheered, but his eyes scanned the room as if expecting a challenge. Ava forced a smile, her fingers twisting her necklace, her ambition warring with uncertainty. The crowd's murmurs grew, some envied the spectacle, others questioned Mason's claims. I sipped my drink, my heart calm but resolute. The return list was due today, and I knew Mason's boasts were empty. His nervous glances, Ava's tense posture, and Rachel's quiet anger were threads in a tapestry about to fray. I waited, ready for the moment my past sacrifice would be undone. The village hall pulsed with the clamor of Mason Blake and Ava Young's wedding, a spectacle of extravagance in Verdania's lean 1975 summer. Emma Lane, sat in a corner, my new dress a quiet defiance against the whispers of the gathered crowd. Verdania's re-education program, a collectivist mandate to modernize rural lands, had tethered us to these fields where return spots to the city were rare rewards for exceptional work. In my past life, I had surrendered mine earned through my crop rotation techniques to Mason, fueling his rise while I withered in betrayal. Reborn with memories of his deceit, I waited my journal tucked in my pocket as the moment of truth loomed. The banquet tables overflowed with roasted vegetables and bread starkly contrasting the frugal wedding Mason and I had shared in my past life. Mason raised a glass in a tailored suit, his voice loud but strained. To Ava, my future in the city, his eyes darted betraying the paranoia that had grown since his rejection of me. Radiant in her floral crown, Ava forced a smile, her fingers twisting her gold necklace. Her ambition to escape widowhood's stigma hinged on Mason's promise of a return spot, but her tense posture hinted at doubt. She had endured Verdania's scorn since her husband's death, and failure now would trap her in rural exile. Suddenly, the hall's doors swung open, and the team leader, a stern woman named Clara, burst in clutching an envelope. A messenger trailed her, their faces alight with urgency. "The return list is here," Clara announced, her voice cutting through the music. Mason straightened his hand, outstretched, his grin wide but fragile. "That's mine," he declared, his voice carrying a tremor. The crowd leaned forward expectant as Ava's eyes gleamed with hope. Rachel Blake, Mason's sister, stood nearby, her face tight with unease. Her loyalty to him clashed with her growing doubt, her dream of teaching in the city buried under his reckless choices. Clara bypassed Mason, her boots echoing on the wooden floor. She stopped before me, her eyes warm. "Emma Lane, your crop rotation techniques have doubled our yields. This return spot is yours." She handed me the envelope, its weight heavy with promise. The hall fell silent, then erupted in gasps. My hands trembled, tears stinging my eyes as I clutched the paper, the mystical light of rebirth pulsing in my mind, affirming my second chance. In my past life, I'd given this spot to Mason, believing his love was my purpose. My research, meticulous blends of hybrid seeds and local grains had reclaimed it. Mason's face paled, his mouth agape. "This is a mistake," he stammered, his voice cracking. "I was promised the city." Clara's eyes narrowed. "Emma's work revolutionized our fields, Mason." "What have you done but boast?" Ava's smile vanished, her hands clenching as her city dreams crumbled. "Mason, you swore it was certain," she hissed, her voice low but sharp. Her widowhood had driven her to trust him, but now her fear of remaining an outcast surfaced raw and desperate. Rachel stepped closer, her voice barely audible. "Mason, what's happening?" Her loyalty wavered, her sacrifices for him stinging anew. The crowd's murmurs swelled, a mix of awe and scorn. "Emma earned it fairly," one villager said. Another muttered, "Mason lied to Ava." I stood, my heart pounding, but steady the envelope, a shield against their past taunts. Mason lunged forward, his eyes wild. "Please give me my spot, Emma," he demanded, his hands shaking. Clara stepped between us, her voice firm. "The list is final. Harass her and you'll answer to the council." Ava's eyes widened, her ambition turning to panic. "You promised me the city, Mason," she cried, her voice breaking. The hall buzzed with tension. Mason's deception laid bare, his paranoia now a visible fracture. I turned away, the envelope clutched tightly, my resolve unshaken. Tied to my unrealized potential, the light of rebirth had guided me here. My research shed light and was filled with charts that could transform Verdania and beyond. Mason's downfall was his own making, Ava's desperation her burden, and Rachel's quiet anger her cross. As I approached the door, the crowd parted their eyes, a mix of envy and respect. The return spot was mine. With it, I would forge a future alone. The village hall in Verdania buzzed with shock as Emma Lane clutched the return spot envelope, its weight a testament to my reclaimed future. It was 1975, and the re-education program's promise of city permits had fueled years of toil in these rural fields. My crop rotation techniques, blending hybrid seeds with local grains, had earned me this spot, something I'd given Mason Blake in my past life only to be betrayed. Reborn, with memories of his deceit, I stood tall as the crowd's murmurs turned from awe to scorn for Mason, whose lies now unraveled in the heat of his lavish wedding to Ava Young. Mason's face was ashen, his tailored suit crumpled as he staggered forward. "This can't be right!" he shouted, his voice shrill, his hands trembling with desperation. The team leader Clara stood firm, her eyes cold. "Emma's work transformed our yields, Mason. You've done nothing but talk." His eyes darted wildly, the paranoia that had simmered for weeks now a raging fire. In my past life, he'd used my sacrifice to climb to leadership, masking his affair with Ava. Now his false claim of a return spot a lie to win Ava, and the village's respect crumbled before all. Ava's floral crown slipped as she grabbed Mason's arm, her voice sharp with panic. "You swore we'd go to the city." Her auburn hair framed a face twisted with fear. Her ambition to escape widowhood's stigma in Verdania, now a fading dream. Widowed at 22 after her husband perished in a blizzard, she had clung to Mason's promises, her desperation to shed the village's scorn, driving her to trust him. Now her eyes betrayed a raw terror of being trapped, her gold jewelry a hollow reminder of her hopes. "You lied to me," she cried, her slap echoing as it struck Mason's cheek. Rachel Blake, Mason's sister, pushed through the crowd, her face a storm of anger and grief. "Mason, what have you done?" she whispered, her voice breaking. Her loyalty to him, forged in their shared childhood in Verdania's housing compound, had cost her dreams of teaching in the city. She'd joined the re-education program to support him, but his reckless choice of Ava and his lies now strained her devotion. Her eyes met mine, a flicker of respect mingling with her pain, as if she saw my strength where she felt only loss. The crowd's whispers sharpened. "Mason bragged for months," one villager muttered. "Thought he'd outshine Emma." Another scoffed. "He used Ava just like he used her." Ava's father, a burly farmer, stormed forward, his face dark with fury. "You promised my daughter the city, Blake. We turned down a suitor with a 10,000 dowry for you." His voice boomed, reflecting Ava's ambition to escape her past. "You'll answer for this fraud." Ava sobbed, her hands covering her face, her vulnerability exposed as the crowd turned on Mason. The revelation of their intimacy, her trust in his lies, hung heavy, a scandal in Verdania's tight-knit community. Mason's bravado shattered, his shoulders slumping as he pleaded. "It's a mistake. I'll get the next spot, Ava, I swear." His voice cracked, his eyes searching the crowd for allies, finding none. Clara shook her head. "There's no mistake, Mason. Emma's research earned her a place. You've nothing to show." The crowd's scorn grew, their laughter cutting through the festive air. I stood the envelope, a shield, my heart steady with the light of rebirth guiding me. This mystical force, tied to my unrealized potential, had brought me to this moment where my work charts of soil samples and hybrid yields had triumphed. I stepped toward the door, the crowd parting their eyes, a mix of envy and admiration. Mason's voice followed, desperate. "Emma, you stole my spot," he accused, but Clara's glare silenced him. Ava's sobs echoed her dreams of city life dust, while Rachel's quiet anger burned her loyalty to Mason, fraying. My research shed light on a sanctuary of science and purpose. In my past life, I'd abandoned it for Mason's lies. Now I walked away, the return spot mine, ready to forge a future free of their burdens. The fields of Verdania stretched silent under a crescent moon, their quiet a stark contrast to the chaos of Mason Blake and Ava Young's wedding days earlier. I, Emma Lane, sat in my research shed, the glow of a lantern illuminating my crop rotation charts and hybrid seeds. It was 1975, and Verdania's re-education program, a collectivist mandate to modernize rural provinces, had defined my life's work. My return spot to the city, earned through my agricultural innovations, rested securely in my hands, a prize I'd surrendered to Mason in my past life, only to be betrayed. Reborn with memories of his deceit, I now saw his downfall unfolding, his lies exposed at the wedding where my triumph had shone. Weeks after the return list revelation, Mason appeared at my doorstep, a shadow of the man he'd been. His face was pale, bruised from Ava's family's wrath, his eyes hollow with desperation. The tailored suit from his wedding hung loose as if his confidence had withered. "Emma," he rasped, his voice low and unsteady, "you're still waiting for me, aren't you?" His words carried a delusion that chilled me, a sign of his unraveling mind. In my past life, he'd used my sacrifice to climb to leadership, hiding his affair with Ava and their son. His false claim of a return spot had crumbled, leaving him grasping for control. I laughed, the sound sharp in the quiet night. "Have you lost your mind, Mason?" I said, stepping back. His eyes flickered with panic, his hands twitching as he pressed on. "I know the truth now, Emma. In our past life, that return spot was yours. You gave it to me, didn't you? I was blind to betray you." His confession stunned me, a twisted echo of the betrayal I'd uncovered on my deathbed. "I drugged you," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "I caused your infertility so you'd raise my son with Ava. Your illness, it was my fault." Horror surged through me, but relief followed. I'd been spared a deeper tie to him. In my past life, Mason's tenderness had masked his cruelty, his lies about his health covering his sabotage. His paranoia was laid bare, his eyes darting as if expecting judgment from the shadows. Ava's family had beaten him after the wedding, their fury fueled by his broken promises. Ava, widowed young and scorned by Verdania, had trusted Mason to escape her stigma, only to be humiliated when my return spot was announced. Her desperation had turned to rage, her father demanding compensation for a rejected suitor. Mason's delusion that I still loved him revealed a man unmoored, clinging to a fantasy to escape his failures. I gripped my journal where I'd recorded his lies and Ava's doubts, my resolve hardened by the mystical light of rebirth. This force tied to my unrealized potential in agricultural research had given me this chance to rewrite my fate. My crop rotation techniques refined in this shed had secured my return spot, a triumph Mason could never claim. "You're nothing to me now," I said, my voice cold. "Your mess is yours alone." His face twisted a mix of regret and defiance. "I thought you'd forgive me, Emma. You've always been kind. I need you now." His words, once manipulative, now sounded desperate, a plea from a man losing his grip. Rachel Blake's warnings echoed in my mind. At the wedding, she'd called Mason reckless, her loyalty strained by his betrayal of me and Ava. Her dreams of teaching, buried under Verdania's rigid system, made her a reluctant witness to his fall. Ava's complexity lingered too. Her ambition to escape widowhood had driven her to Mason, but her trust in him was her undoing. As Mason stood before me, his bruises a testament to his crumbling world, I felt no pity. My shed filled with charts and soil samples was my future. I turned away, leaving him in the dark, his descent a consequence of his own making. The moon hung low over Verdania's quiet fields, casting a pale glow on my small cottage, as I, Emma Lane, stood at my gate, my heart steady but alert. It was 1975, and the re-education program's rigid demands still bound Verdania's youth to rural toil, with return spots to the city as rare rewards. My crop rotation techniques, blending hybrid seeds with local grains, had secured mine a triumph I'd lost to Mason Blake in my past life. Reborn with memories of his betrayal, his affair with Ava Young, his sabotage of my health, I had watched his lies unravel at their wedding. Now, weeks later, Mason's shadow loomed at my doorstep, his desperation a dark storm. Mason slipped through the gate, his bruised face gaunt under the moonlight, his eyes wild with delusion. "Emma, marry me," he pleaded, his voice hoarse. "Give me your return spot, and I'll love only you." His suit was tattered, a far cry from the wedding's grandeur, and his trembling hands betrayed a mind unhinged. In my past life, he'd drugged me to ensure I raised his son with Ava, a confession he'd made days ago. His offer was a twisted fantasy, as if my forgiveness could erase his crimes. "You're married to Ava," I snapped, my voice cold. "And I'd never sacrifice for you again." His face darkened, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "You're mine, Emma," he growled, stepping closer. "Please give me the spot, or I'll tell everyone you seduced me. You'll live in shame." His paranoia, simmering since his public humiliation, had boiled into menace. Ava's family had beaten him, enraged by his lies about the return spot, and her desperation, born of widowhood's stigma, had turned to fury. Rachel Blake, his sister, had warned him of his recklessness, her loyalty fraying as her teaching dreams faded in Verdania's fields. Mason's delusion that I still loved him now fueled a threat I hadn't anticipated. I gripped my journal where I'd recorded his lies, my resolve anchored by the mystical light of rebirth. This force, tied to my unrealized potential in agricultural research, had guided me to this moment. My shed, filled with charts and soil samples, awaited a testament to my work that had earned my return spot. "Mason," I said, my voice calm, "do you know the penalty for assault in Verdania?" His eyes widened, caught off guard, but he pressed closer, a sick smile spreading. "I won't hurt you, Emma. I'm making things right. You'll marry me, and we'll go to the city together." His words were a warped echo of his past life's charm, now laced with madness. I'd seen him lurking earlier, his shadow flitting outside my cottage. Suspecting trouble, I'd called the team leader, Clara, and the village police, circling back to confront him. As Mason reached for me, the gates slammed open. Clara and two officers burst in their lanterns, casting stark light. Mason Blake stepped back, Clara barked. The officers tackled him, pinning him to the ground as he thrashed. "I'm reborn," he screamed, his voice frantic. "I deserve the city, Emma's mine." His cries, once confident boasts, were now the ravings of a broken man, his paranoia consuming him. Rachel arrived breathless, her face pale. "Mason, stop this," she pleaded, her loyalty shattered by his madness. She turned to me, her eyes heavy with guilt. I should have stopped him sooner, she whispered, her dreams of teaching buried under his failures. Ava's absence loomed large. Her rage at Mason's lies had pushed him further into delusion. I stood firm, handing my journal to Clara, its pages evidence of his deceit. He threatened me, I said, my voice steady. The officers dragged Mason away, his screams fading into the night. My return spot was safe, my future clear, as I returned to my cottage, ready to leave his chaos behind. The dawn broke over Verdania's fields, painting the wheat golden as Emma Lane stood outside my cottage, the return spot envelope tucked safely in my pocket. It was 1975, and the re-education program's grueling demands still bound Verdania's youth to rural toil with city permits as rare rewards. My crop rotation techniques, blending hybrid seeds with local grains, had earned me this escape, a prize I'd lost to Mason Blake in my past life. Reborn with memories of his betrayal, his affair with Ava Young, his sabotage of my health, I had faced him down days ago, his threats silenced by the police. Now whispers of a darker crime rippled through the village, sealing his fate. Word spread like wildfire Mason had killed Ava. After their wedding humiliation, where my return spot exposed his lies, Ava had demanded a divorce, calling him a worthless failure. Enraged Mason pushed her down the stairs of their home, her body crumpling on the wooden steps. She died instantly, her auburn hair splayed, her gold jewelry glinting in the dim light. The village buzzed with shock, their scorn for Mason now laced with horror. A widowed young woman driven to escape Verdania's stigma, Ava trusted Mason's promises of a city life. Her ambition born of hardship had led her to him only to end in tragedy. Mason's arrest followed swiftly, his screams echoing as police dragged him from his home. I didn't mean it, he cried, his voice frantic, his eyes wild with madness. The paranoia that had simmered since his rejection of me, evident in his trembling hands and restless glances, had erupted into violence. In my past life, he'd drugged me to raise his son with Ava, a confession he'd made in desperation. His delusion had turned deadly, his belief in a reborn destiny unraveling into chaos. The village saw him for what he was, a man broken by his lies and his ambition, a hollow shell. Rachel Blake Mason's sister arrived at my cottage, pale and drawn. Emma, I'm sorry, she said, her voice trembling. I should have stopped him. I thought family loyalty mattered. Her loyalty, forged in their childhood in Verdania's housing compound, had cost her dreams of teaching in the city. She'd joined the re-education program to support Mason, but his betrayal of me, and now Ava's death, shattered her resolve. Her eyes, red from tears, held a flicker of admiration for my strength, contrasting with her heart. He's lost his mind, she whispered, but I couldn't see it coming. The village council convened, and Mason was convicted of intentional homicide and sentenced to death under Verdania's strict laws. His trial was swift, his ravings about being reborn dismissed as madness. The crowd outside the council hall murmured their pity for Ava, mingling with contempt for Mason. Her family, once furious over his lies, now mourned, their anger replaced by grief. Ava's complexity lingered in my mind. Her ambition to escape widowhood's scorn had driven her to Mason, but her trust in him was her undoing. I felt no joy in her death, only a quiet resolve to move forward. My research shed, filled with charts and soil samples, stood as my sanctuary. My crop rotation techniques, which had doubled Verdania's yields, were my ticket to the city, a future I'd reclaimed through Rebirth's mystical light. This force, tied to my unrealized potential, had guided me past Mason's threats and Ava's taunts. Rachel lingered at my gate, her voice soft. You were always stronger, Emma. I wish I'd seen it sooner. I nodded, unmoved by Mason's fate, focusing on the Maya culture was awaiting me as I returned to my cottage. The weight of their TA thieves fell away, and my path finally became clearer. The sun rose over Verdania's fields in 1976, its golden light glinting off the city skyline. As Emma Lane stepped off the train, my return ticket envelope clutched tightly. Verdania's re-education program, a collectivist mandate of the 1970s, had bound me to rural toil for years, with city permits as rare rewards. My crop rotation techniques, blending hybrid seeds with local grains, had earned me this escape, a prize I'd surrendered to Mason Blake in my past life only to face betrayal. Reborn with memories of his deceit, his affair with Ava Young, his sabotage of my health, I had reclaimed my future, leaving his downfall behind. I stood before the Agricultural Research Institute, ready to begin anew. The city's hum contrasted with Verdania's quiet fields, its towering buildings a canvas for my ambitions. Once confined to a cramped shed, my research now had a home in the Institute's labs, where I could refine my methods to transform urban farming. The mystical light of rebirth tied to my unrealized potential had guided me here past Mason's lies and Ava's taunts. In my past life, I'd abandoned my work for Mason, believing his love was my purpose. His confession that he'd drugged me to raise his son with Ava had freed me from guilt, my infertility a blessing in disguise. Mason's fate no longer touched me. Convicted of Ava's murder after pushing her down the stairs in a rage, he faced a death sentence, his paranoia and delusions exposed. His screams of being reborn had been dismissed as madness, his ambition a crumbled facade. Ava's tragic end lingered in my mind. Her ambition to escape widowhood's stigma had driven her to trust Mason, a choice that cost her life. Her death, while shocking, was a consequence of their shared delusion, and I felt only a distant sorrow for the woman who'd mocked my dreams. Rachel Blake's visit before I left Verdania had stayed with me. "You were always stronger, Emma," she'd said, her eyes heavy with guilt. Her loyalty to Mason, forged in their childhood in Verdania's housing compound, had blinded her to his flaws, costing her dreams of teaching. Now she faced her path, her admiration for me a quiet spark in her grief. "I'll find my way," she whispered, a promise to herself as much as to me. Her words echoed as I entered the institute, a reminder of the cost of blind devotion. Proposals flooded in as news of my return spot spread, but I declined each one. In my past life, marriage to Mason had chained me to sacrifice my health, ruined by his betrayal. Now I chose myself, my heart guarded by lessons etched deep. My research shed in Verdania, filled with charts and soil samples, had been my proving ground. In the city, my crop rotation techniques, doubling yields through precise rotations, promised to reshape agriculture. Colleagues greeted me, their eyes bright with curiosity, eager to explore my methods. I felt the weight of my past lift, replaced by purpose. The Institute's labs buzzed with activity microscopes and seed trays lining the benches. I set my journal down, its pages a record of Mason's lies and my triumph. The light of rebirth, a mystical force that had sparked this second chance, pulsed within me, urging me to build a legacy. Verdania's fields had been my crucible, but the city was my canvas. As I began my work, a colleague asked about my methods, and I smiled, explaining the hybrid blends I'd perfected. The future stretched before me, bright and unburdened, a chapter I would write alone.